Welcome everyone to day one of the Neighborhood Design Center's week of live streams. Thank you for tuning in. My name's Karla Brent and I'm a registered architect in Maryland, and I'm on the Neighborhood Design Center staff working primarily in the Art Space Technical Assistance Program. And today I'm here with Maggie Schneider. Maggie uses they, them pronouns, and they are the building manager of this beautiful historic space that we're in. And behind the scenes, we also have NDC's Deputy Director, Bryony, who's gonna help monitor the conversation. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to interact and type them in, and we'll try to find the time to fit them into the discussion. So I'll start with a little background. We're at 405 East Oliver Street, which is in Baltimore's Greenmount West neighborhood. Greenmount West, if you're not familiar, it's bounded by the train tracks to the south, Greenmount West to the east, North Ave to the north, and Guilford Ave to the west. It's primarily a residential neighborhood with some industrial buildings. And the building we're in is an industrial building with a very long history, starting from the 19th century when it was used as a brewery. And then in the 20th century, it kind of transitioned into a manufacturing space. And, various companies have been in here. I think the last one was the Crown Shade Company, which made Venetian blinds and window shades. And they relocated to Rosedale, Maryland. So they're still up and running. But after they left, the building was vacant for a couple of decades until a group of friends and artists formed an LLC to buy the building. Stuart Watson, Jim Bose were definitely key members of that group that formed the LLC. And that was in early
2002.
2002, Maggie, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's when they began their 2-decade odyssey of cleaning up the building, getting out all of the remaining manufacturing equipment that was in here, and converting it into the art space it is today. And most recently, you might have heard in the spring of 2022, the building transferred ownership again from the LLC to, I guess after 2 decades, they're kind of ready to pass on ownership. So Central Baltimore Partnership, a local nonprofit, teamed up with developer Ernst Valerie to purchase the building with the goal of maintaining the art spaces that have been established here and building on them, which we'll discuss.
And also, we can't forget to mention preserving the site of the Tool Library, which is, this building has been their home the entire time they've existed.
Yes, the Station North Tool Library. That's kind of a bit of the building's background. So Maggie, as the building manager, and you've done this with the previous owners and also now with Central Baltimore Partnership, can you tell us a little bit, how did you end up here? What's your role?
Yeah, so I initially was brought on by Stuart Watson and Jim Bose. I was leaving the art museum world, which I'd been working for about 5 or 6 years. I needed to be challenged, but do something a little bit different. And it just coincided with when Jim and Stu were leaving for the UK. They needed someone to take over taking care of the building. And so I kind of hopped in and was very much on a crash course learning journey of how to take care of a 70,000 square foot building and how to understand the needs of the various tenants that are in the building, primarily artists, but also the Tool Library, which is a very unique tenant in so many different ways. So I worked with them right around 2 years. And then I happened to be pregnant in 2021, and at the end of my pregnancy decided to take a leave so that I could prepare for the arrival of my child and then also have some postpartum leave. And I did that. The building had already been posted for sale. It's tumultuous time. So it was also nice for me to sort of extract myself from that and focus on myself and my child. And then at the end of 2021, I was approached by one of the developers that they were working in partnership with, not specifically Ernst, but another one. And they inquired about whether or not I wanted to come back. I happen to love this building and love the community this building houses. And I was nearing that point where I needed to start thinking about going back to work. And so it sort of, again, once like magically lined up with where I was at. So I came back on. I started back as property manager under CBP in February 2022, and I have been with the space ever since. So it's roughly been 3.5 years.
Oh, congrats on your 3.5-year anniversary with the building and for your baby.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. And so, yeah, it's just interesting hearing about your journey and your background in, more arts and like not a conventional, building management role. So I'm sure that like just makes you more in tune with the users and the occupants of the space and what their needs are. And
yes,
seems like a really good fit.
So I actually have a MFA from in multidisciplinary practice. And like many artists have been trying to figure out like what the balance is between what pays the bills and then how to like continue to have that creative engagement. I worked in museums, like I said, for a while, but I was working in installation, so I already had some of that like construction build out tool understanding, familiarity, which I think is very, very helpful for a job like this. And yes, working with the tenants, I actually know I went to school with quite a few of the tenants. And just, this helps connect me to the creative community in a way that, as just an artist, I might not personally have that same connection. So yeah, it's been really, really cool to be able to help folks, transition from different studios as they grow so that they can like have more room or have the room that they need to do what they're trying to do with their practice, get a better sense of like how people even set up their spaces. That's one of my favorite things to do is like when a new tenant moves in, which sadly we are full for now, but we're working on making more spaces because everyone really wants to get into the building. Just seeing how people set up their space and like what their practice looks like. That's something that I've always been really curious about. So I'm very privileged in the role that I have to be able to like, maintain order and safety and also get these sneak peeks.
Cool. Kind of random question, but made me think when you mentioned like your familiarity with construction and tools, do you see construction as like a form of art and like, or even thinking about these, like, do you get like a creative feeling or outlet in doing this type of work?
Yes, it's different than what I'm doing in my studio, but it's also very much linked. So I'm very interested in space and spatial awareness, spatial arrangement. And this building is nothing but lots and lots of space. Yes. And so I don't know if like your average construction worker would be like, oh yeah, I'm totally an artist. But there's it's stuff like, I mean, you have to think in a certain way. You have to think about like the whole picture. You have to be able to like dial into like a very specific detail, but then understand how that detail is going to impact the larger whole, and then how it's going to impact the larger whole over time, which is another thing that I've been learning a lot more so. And especially with the way in which you and I met and how we've been engaged, like thinking about, I'm not an architect, but learning about what architects look at and what they think about, and how that impacts the way spaces are developed. Like all of that definitely comes back into my studio practice, but I wouldn't say it's like a one-for-one. It's definitely like filtered.
Yeah. Cool. I guess that's a good segue to what we're doing now. So NDC currently has a project with Maggie in doing some visioning for the 3rd and 4th floor. What would you say is kind of the genesis for this initiative with the upper floors of the building?
Well, first I just want to say right now we are in a 3rd floor unit, just to give everyone a little bit of reference here at Area 405. So I met Karla, I don't even remember if it was like 2019 or 2020. I met Karla when I was working for the previous owners, and we were working with NDC to help us develop a narrative so that the previous owners could try and get some funding to do some outstanding work that's needed for the elusive use and occupancy permit. So when the ownership transferred, and I was talking to Ellen James, Executive Director of CBP, it was a natural segue as we were talking about, like, what are we going to do with these unused spaces that we have in the building? It's like, well, we should obviously talk to NDC and engage the Arts Technical Space Program. And I was like, doesn't Karla do that? Oh, yeah, I love Karla, so let's go. So initially, we had actually talked about doing some improvements to the gallery on the first floor. But then the way things have been moving with this project, everything sort of shifts one week to the next. And then the priority focus started to be these potential tenants that are coming in. So the space that we're in right now is a former residential, a former residential space of one of the previous owners. And one of our projects, we've got the two. We've got the third and fourth floor overall, and then we've got a tenant fit out. This space is going to be the site of a tenant fit out. Which is really exciting because the tenant is also someone who currently has a studio. And so it's a business that she has that she wants to bring to the building. As far as the rest of the floors go, the third and fourth floor, we have a bunch of expansive unused space that we need to figure out what to do with. I know on the third floor, I'd really like to see there be more artist studios, just because there's a huge need in the community. Pretty much every building that has studios has a waiting list from what I can tell. We also have a waiting list. So finding a way to expand that a little bit further. And then on the fourth floor, figuring out with, obvious code requirements, what kind of creative use we can have up there is the plan. So that is, I think, in a nutshell, what we're doing with NDC.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And you mentioned use and occupancy permit, which I don't know if everyone knows what the heck that is, but it's basically upon the final inspection that the city gives a building, they'll give you the use and occupancy permit saying basically approved, it's ready to be open to the public. So yeah, it's definitely important in commercial spaces when you're inviting the public in and you're kind of responsible for the building staying up and safe.
Yes.
And making sure everyone can safely egress, exit the building in the case of an emergency, that sort of thing. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal in, all these projects is eventually getting that UNO permit. Great. Well, so we mentioned the previous LLC, Central Baltimore Partnership's involvement, NDC, Ernst Valerie. Is there anyone we missed that's also involved in kind of crafting this concept for the third and fourth floor and other initiatives in the?
Well, we're working with John Renner, who's an independent developer, and he's been working on the project, I think, since it was in the sale progress. I'm not actually sure on that timeline. We have Lori Lessam, who is the architect that we're working with for our current project of use and occupancy permit. Dave Huber is basically our construction manager for all of the various contractors that are coming in and out. Although I am the on-site, I'm basically the site manager for any of the work that's coming. So Dave does the more administrative side of things and the money side of things, but I'm the one who's on the ground who's I have to know what's going on in the building. And I'm the kind of person where if someone's coming to work on something and I don't fully understand it, I'm going to stand there and ask you questions and watch what you're doing.
You need to see it.
Yeah. So, and I think that's part of what has helped me become more of a low-key authority of the building itself, is that I want to understand all the systems. I want to know how the sprinkler system works. I want to understand how the fire alarm system works. I want to understand how the doors work. I want to know every in and out to make it run smoother and more efficiently, so that everyone who's using the space is getting what they need, and there's no I've had this maintenance issue out for. It's no, we have maintenance issues, we get it, and I want to understand how it got fixed, even if someone else is fixing it. So, yeah.
What else? I guess moving forward, so currently, we're working on kind of coming up with a full vision for the whole building that's using the currently underutilized space. So when you like visualize a few years in the future and like these new studios are built, what does that mean for your community and the arts community and like the neighborhood? And like what are you kind of seeing?
So, and I think it goes beyond just the spaces that we're envisioning and that we're working on together with our agreements. I think it's like also the gallery is actually a huge component to this building, as is the tool library, which is our first level public facing spaces. And so, you know, I can't speak too much on behalf of the tool library, but they're a significant tenant for the building in terms of like how much space they occupy, but then also what they bring to the immediate community, but also like Baltimore at large as far as what their mission is. So working with them to make sure that they feel confident and good about continuing their residency here, essentially, and making sure that that's something that's you know, mutually beneficial on both sides is really important. The use and occupancy is really holding us up on like relaunching the gallery, but I have heard from multiple people, including the new president of the Greenmount West Community Association, the desire that the community has for the gallery to reopen, because that was such a community hub when Stuart Watson was running it. And so for me, like, life safety, fire safety is so vital and important, but also the thing that's driving getting the gallery back open so that that can be the space where people can actually like physically enter the space and engage with the space, even if you don't have a studio here. In terms of the expansion of the studios, you know, being able to serve a slightly larger population of the artists in Baltimore City is really important. We actually have one major criteria for being an artist in this building is you have to be a Baltimore City resident. That's really important to us. We want to keep Baltimore City resources reserved for Baltimore City folks. That's an important thing to do, I think. And the current tenants that we have, they're all very serious artists. I would say most of them are, you know, from like mid-level emerging to like established artists. A lot of them have, what's the word? Sorry, the brain goes sometimes. International practices. And so, you know, as we expand spaces, making sure that we consider getting in artists who are going to want to stay long term and really commit to being in this space. Making sure we have like the right kind of spaces for artists, thinking about the kinds of materials that they're using and the way amenities sort of shift. And then as far as the fourth floor, I feel like that vision is so open right now. And that's also very contingent on like what we can do based on code requirement. But I would be really excited to see, you know, it's hard to say because it's really not my choice. Like there's my vision and then there's like the owner's vision and I'm here to help facilitate that. But making sure that the fourth floor is used in a way that it's still dedicated to creativity, because that's really what this building is about. It's a creative hub, and it's not, you know, specifically like it's only fine art or this. And again, I'm going to go back to the gallery. That's where the gallery really allows us to open up to theater, performance art, musicians, and stuff like that. Whereas most of our second and third floor artists are visual artists, you know. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. And you meant, yes.
I have a question and comment from our online audience.
Cool.
And this seems like a good time here and discussing sort of like the public facing, the street activation. And so there's a comment to say, can't wait to see more street activation for safety. And we touched on this before, Maggie, with really that opportunity for the ground floor to be that community hub, whether it's reactivating gallery space, and we know Station North Tool Library has been such an integral part of the community for so long, and they're really providing a lot of that sort of interaction and liveliness. But, that, you know, that was coming from one of our former Greenmount West community leaders, community association, Lauren.
I love Lauren. Hi, Lauren. That's such a great point, though, to bring up. It's actually one of the things, and I don't know if this will be something that will engage NDC or will engage a different firm. just based on what the project will contain, is a facade improvement. And part of the facade improvement is going to be a lighting project to make sure that there are better lights, because I know that that is a big concern and has been an ongoing concern for Greenmount West. So yeah, a lot of moving parts over here for sure. Yeah.
We are about 20 minutes here
Okay.
for the live stream. I want to call out to the audience if there are any additional questions that you want to hear from Karla about architecture, about art space technical assistance program, from Maggie about the building, the history of the building. I have a question, which is like, what's the building's best? What's something so kind of wonderful or wild or unique or specific you just love?
I love the big scratch office. It is, I would say it is the best kept secret because I don't think anybody really knows what they're walking over unless they're familiar with old spaces, and that is the basement that is below the gallery. So a little bit more detail on the history of the building. The original structure of the building was actually the first floor gallery space, and underneath is a huge cavernous basement, which I think because it was initially built to be a brewery, I think they used that for like, aging their barrels and whatnot. It is really creepy for me to go down there, but anytime I take contractors down there, which I have to on occasion, they're always just so fascinated and just like, this is so cool. So I would say, like, most people don't know how big the building is from the front, so anytime they get past the gallery, it's like big wide eyes, but that basement is something else. It really is. Yeah.
Karla, as you've been getting to know the building, anything that surprised you or intrigued you as an architect?
Well, the building's history is really interesting to me, which I touched on a little bit. I've been looking at like the stairwells and hallways, corridors, like from an egress perspective a lot, which isn't very exciting, but like it's very kind of piecemeal a little bit, just in terms of, when the residential units were being used and like the stairs they created. They're beautiful spaces, and yeah. Yeah, I really liked the lighting fixtures in one of the other residential units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the previous owners, there was a certain amount of like respecting the spaces as it had been, and trying to bring that history forward. And I think that that spirit is sort of what drives me a little bit, is like, how do we continue to move forward, look to the future, make these really important big improvements and changes that are going to impact the people that use the building, but also the community surrounding the building. And then also, how do we carry that past with us, that, making sure that we understand we're building on something that was already established, and that foundation is part of why we're here.
Yeah. Can't ignore it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie,
pleasure.
for spending time with us today, and I hope you enjoyed watching.